Finally, I could hear the bells on our bullocks' necks as Laka hitched them to the carts. I peeked inside my mother's room. She was twisting her hair into a bun. Hurry, Va, hurry. I don't want to be late. I danced like a peacock, showing off my purple gagri polka, a long skirt and a blouse. Don't fly away in your frenzy, Leela. The fair will be here for 5 days, and you'll have plenty of time to have fun. I wanted to buy my new bangles and ribbons before they're all picked over. Ba raised her hand as to slow me down. Kamija. I still have to change my clothes. I opened her wooden cupboard and pulled out a sari. Wear this one. It was my favorite because it had bands of vermilion, indigo, and turmeric stretching the length of it.
The pattern was called Luberia Waves, and it was breeze light and festival bright. I liked bright colors on Bob because her silky black hair contrasted with them and made her sparkle. I twirled the sari around myself until I was caught inside it. Ba unwrapped it. Sari, fine. Then she picked up my ivory-colored otani scarf and draped it over my shoulder. Wait outside, I'll be right there. I hurried through the back corridor. Only last week I helped her, Ba, cover its floor with a fresh layer of dried cow dung and mud. I traced it, the half moon shape in the peacock's feet patterns Ba had showed me how to make the heel of my palm and outstretched fingers. The two of us finished overlaying the entire floor in one morning. In the backyard, Laka, who took care of our animals, was spreading a blanket on the floor of the cart. His long arms moved swiftly, and the tiny mirrors on his embroidered vest and cap twinkled. I could hear his voice, but I didn't understand what he was saying. Laka hardly spoke more than a few words to people, but he talked to the bullocks and the buffaloes all the time. I tiptoed behind him. I always wanted to make him jump when I snuck up on him, but it never happened. Ever since I was little, I had tried creeping like a tigress, following a spotted deer, but he was always ready for me.
Could he feel the tremors of the earth and air before I uttered a word? Ready to take me? I said, close to his ear. He didn't jump or even turn around. Are you wearing new anklets? He asked in his deep, steady voice. I didn't reply. He faced me, and I was annoyed to see laughter in his eyes. He held out his hand. I ignored it, lifted my gagri slightly, and climbed onto the cart myself. I pulled my knees close and wrapped my arms around them, looking down at my exposed feet and anklets. I admired my silver toe rings and fingered the anklets. Chun chun, chan chun chun. They sang. I was so used to the tinkling of bangles and anklets that I didn't think about how loud they could be. No wonder Laka had heard me coming. I looked towards the back door. Where was Ba? A butterfly fluttered close to the cart, delicate and shimmery as a full moon sky. I glanced at Laka, who was staring into the horizon. Laka, what will you do at the fair? I asked. I will talk to my friends. But how do you know they will be there? They will be there. Besides, I'm taking 2 of them with me. I played with the clasp of my anklet, and it came off.
I dangled it on my hand. I'm not your friend, I teased. I'm not talking about you. I guess he meant the 2 bullocks. He patted his friends, and then opened the wide wooden back gates. As he pulled the cart out, I saw Ba. Laka closed the gate after her. Can you put this on? I asked Ba once she had climbed in the cart and sat across from me. Don't play with the clasp. If it gets loose, you'll be sorry. I didn't do anything, it just came off. Laka was ready to drive the cart, and it had taken the bridle on his hand. He shook his head with glancing back at me. He had seen me playing with the clasp, but would never tell on me. Bapaji, my father, assumed we'd walk to the fair, but I hadn't wanted to. I had told Ba, by the time we walk the 2 miles to the fair, my gargri will be covered with dust, and I'll be too tired to have fun. Besides, would have to leave so early. Can't you ask Bapuji if Laka can take us? Ba had convinced Bapuji. It was always that way. I'd talk Ba into cooperating with what I wanted, and she'd talk Bapuji into approving. At the end of the street where the four corners met, Laka stopped the cart suddenly.
I got up on my knees to see what was happening. You'll be 13 soon and must behave like a young woman. Don't gawk, Ba said. I was just looking. Before I could finish my sentence, we saw a white man and 3 Indian men riding on horses. Even though the white people ruled us, they rarely visited small towns like our Jamlee. Last year, when a white lady came to our school, all the men and women stood under the banyan tree just to get a glimpse of her. It was the first time a white woman had come to our town. The Englishman, passed close by me. I held my breath. I could have touched his leg if I wanted to. Ba and Laka were quiet, so were the shoppers and the shopkeepers. Even our bullocks didn't move their heads, so their bells were silent. One of the Indian men was pointing at the big banyan tree in the middle of Chowki Square and talking in Angrezi. I couldn't understand what he was saying. Why is he here? I whispered. He's here to inspect how much damage we've had from the drought, Ba whispered back. When they were farther down the street, we began moving again. I turned around to take a good look at the back of the Angrezi.
Ba slapped my leg gently. You're not a child anymore. I want to see if he keeps a stick of bamboo down his back. He looks so stiff. You must not flutter and fly like a wild bird. It won't be long before you have your new and go to your husband's house. Lately, Ba had been telling me not to laugh and sing loudly and not to jump when I was excited. All because I was going to live with my husband, Raman-law, and his family. Ba's nudging and scolding annoyed me. I had been engaged when I was 2 years old and married at 9. And next year I'm going to have my anu, a ceremony to send me to Raman-law's house. We will invite him and his family, and I will get to wear a new sari and gold jewelry. A priest will chant Sanskrit mantras for the safe journey to my husband's house and through life. We will celebrate by singing and eating good food. Then I'll leave the cocoon of my family and fly off to make a new home. Before I enter their house, Raman-law Ba will welcome me with flowers and gifts. I am glad Raman-law is from Jamlee. That's why I don't have to go far. Like my classmates, I knew I wouldn't go to school after my anu. Last year, there were only 5 girls in my class. Then 2 of the girls had their anu and didn't come back to school. I wasn't invited to their ceremonies because they are from different castes.
My family is Brahmin, the highest caste, and we can't eat food made by non-Brahmins. Last summer, I went to my cousin Jaya's anu. Dressed in her shimmering sari and jewelry, Jaya looked like she had descended from the stars. Her arms were covered with colorful bangles, and women fed her sweets all day. Jaya is older than I am, and gets to do everything first. It's irritating. Her first baby tooth came out before mine did. She could fetch water from the well before I could. She learned how to read and write before I did. But I don't mind that she had her anu first. After all, I'm going to be with Raman-law and his family for the rest of my life, so I want to stay with my family as long as I can. I've heard people say, daughters are someone else's treasure, and the sooner you part with them, the better off you are. Daughters look good only in their in-laws' house, and the younger you marry your daughter, the quicker you're done with your obligations. I don't think those things are true. I can't imagine my family being relieved on the day they give me my anu. Compared to our neighbors and relatives, our family is small. Bapuji's older brother, my kaka, and his wife, my kaki, have no children. My brother, Kanubai, is 21. He lives in Ahmedabad and just started teaching at a college.
When Kanubai was 5, a holy man blessed him, saying, "You will grow up to be a learned man." So Bapaji refused to arrange Kanubai's marriage until Kanubai had finished his studies. Kanubai graduated this last year, and Ba was anxious for him to get married, but he said that he'd wait until after Manu. The cart was moving along at a good pace, which I liked because the ride was fast and bumpy. I saw a clump of gooseberry shrubs that had lost all their leaves and in the drought, exposing their tangled, thorny branches. Only the banyan, mango, kasuda, and other big trees were still green. But even those leaves looked dull, as if too much sun had bleached out their color. Except for the dusty streets, our town was usually lush. Will all this green turn when the rain comes? I asked Bapaji. I hope so. This past monsoon season was the first rain came by the end of June, so Bapaji and Kaka plowed and planted our farm. Then we waited and waited. There was little rain for the entire months of monsoon. Our harvest was barely enough to feed us. All we could do now is wait for the next rainy season, which came only once a year. I heard that a long time ago, Jamli had 7 years of drought. I couldn't imagine what would happen if our crops failed 7 years in a row.
What if the rains don't come again? Ba's face turned gloomy. Then famine would ravage everything. Even the big trees would suffer. I didn't like to think about it. A familiar voice shouted, wait for us." It was my Masi, Ba's younger sister. She and her friend Haraben were walking to the fair. Laka stopped the cart and the ladies scrambled up. Masi had a round face and small ears like Ba. Her curly hair escaped her bun and looked messy. "Where are the boys?" Ba asked Masi. "They went to the fair with their cousins hours ago," Masi replied. I was relieved. Masi had 3 sons between the ages of 6 and 10. If they had all been with her, our poor bullocks would have had even more weight to pull. Words would pour out of Masi like the endless hum of crickets in the night. As soon as the bullocks started moving, Masi's tongue did too. "Sister, look at that mango tree. The flowers are so small that you can't even see them. In a good year, they say 1,000 blossoms yield 100 mangoes. We'll be lucky to get even 50 this year." Ba and I had already talked about the drought, and I didn't want to make her worry more. So I turned to Ba. "Tell Masi about the new sari Kanubai gave you."
Masi's eyes brightened as she tucked her hair behind her ear and looked expectantly at Ba. Masi's mother-in-law was stern and wouldn't allow her to buy frivolous things like clothes or jewelry that wasn't made of gold. Masi borrowed Ba's saris all the time and was thrilled when Ba got a new one. It meant she would get to parade a new sari in front of her mother-in-law without disobeying her. We passed 3 young couples as we rode. The men walked slightly ahead of the woman. One of the women carried a child on her hip, and another held a young girl's hand. 2 identical boys scampered along. The one carrying the child is pregnant again. Haraben said those twins are hers too, and her mother-in-law refuses to take care of a single one. "She looks tired," I said, noticing that the woman was falling behind. "That's what having 4 children in 5 years will do to you. Make sure you don't do that, Leela," Masi said. Haraben smiled in approval. Before I could reply, Ba said, "Leela, look on your side." We were coming to the top of the hill. On the left was Taransi River and Lord Shiva's temple. "Ba, it's beautiful," I said, pointing to the fairground by the river. It was filled with shades of crimson and ochre, emerald and indigo from the women's saris and the men's turbans. The shrill call of a langur monkey punctured the air, followed by more calls. The distant trees seemed to come alive with the group of langur traveling through the canopy.
I squinted my eyes, looking for white fur, but I couldn't see a single monkey. A flock of green parrots flew overhead, their red beaks streaking the sky. Laka dropped us at the fair in front of Lord Shiva's temple, on the bank of the Tarsani. Because of the drought, the wide waters of the river had shrunk to a trickle. I lifted my gogri slightly with one hand, held Boz with the other, and walked into the fair. On the right side of the temple, a man made jalbis. First, he fried batter made of white flour. Then, he dunked the hot circles in sugar syrup. Several people stood near him, waiting to be served. Mossy and Harabin stopped to talk to someone they knew. I was glad Ba kept walking. There were women selling fruit, boars, papayas, black and white shingaras, and finger-long bananas. Farther down, the vendors offered idols, rosaries made of holy rudraksh beads, and utensils of brass and copper. I held onto Ba's hand and walked past all of them. Someone waved a burning stick of incense near my face. Ba took a deep breath and slowed down.
Come, Ba, let's get the bangles first, I said, pulling her hand. This is the last package, the man with the burning incense said. No one else here will have this fragrance, the essence of Kashmira roses. Ba took another deep breath and stopped. I glowed at the man and pulled Ba. I'll come back, Ba said to the man as we hurried away. I was finally kneeling in front of the basket filled with the shellac bracelets of every color in peacock's feather in the sky at sunset, and shades of raw and ripe mangoes. The man looked at my wrists and, without measuring, picked out those of bracelets and slipped them on my arm. They fit perfectly, but I didn't like their orange-brown color. He showed me 3 or 4 more sets, but I didn't want any of them either. Then he took out a pair of wrapped in newspaper. As he unwrapped the paper, I read the words "war" on it. Every day there was something in the paper about the war being fought across the oceans. I didn't really understand how we were a part of it when our land was not even being attacked. Bapuji said it was because the British ruled us as they were at war, so we had no choice but to help pay for it. The war was a big fire that had to be fed first. That meant we had a shortage of many things.
Besides fuel, everyday purchases like sugar, wheat, and cloth cost more now. The man slipped the bracelets onto my wrist. They were shiny red with yellow dots. I turned to Ba. I like these. But you just got here. Don't you want to try a few more? These are what I want. Are you sure? Yes. After Ba paid the man, he asked me if I wanted the bracelets wrapped up. I shook my head. I want to wear them. Then Ba went back to buy her incense. After that, we walked around the fair. We stopped to listen to a manbahat, a copper pot player. The pot gleamed in the sunlight. The manbahat used a small ring to coax a variety of sounds from the pot. Some were sharp and thin, like the end of a lance. Others were dull and wide, like a bullock cart. We listened until he was done playing a piece. When I put some change in his bowl, he said, "You can try." He handed me a ring. I hit the pot at various places and made different sounds, but I couldn't make music. Farther down on the side of the temple, I picked out a pair of red and gold strings with tassels to braid in my hair.
When we finished going around once, I was surprised to see 2 girls with shiny glass bangles. "Where did you get those?" I asked. They pointed toward a man sitting close to the wall of the temple. He was in shadows, so I hadn't noticed him when he went around the first time. I squeezed Ba's hand. "Let's see what he has." "You already bought bracelets," Ba said. Her voice was irritated, and she wore a frown on her face. I sighed. I know, but the glass ones are so delicate and pretty. I'm not going to buy you any more. How about if we just look at them? I said, hoping Ba would change her mind once I slipped them on my arms. I kept walking with Ba, only a step behind me. When I squatted to get a little closer look at the bangles, I saw the ones I wanted. They were the same shade of red as the ones Ba had just bought, and were as thin as paint. I looked at my hand. These would fit perfectly between the two laka ones I was wearing. Ba, aren't these beautiful? I asked. The man's face was lined with thin creases. He picked up a few bangles with knobby fingers and handed them to Ba. She lifted them up and moved out of the shade to see the sunlight passing through them.
That way, she could tell how good the glass was. I took a bracelet off my right arm. He slipped the 6 glass bangles on my wrist. I slid my bracelet back on. The perfect set, he said. I extended my hand to show to Ba. I could tell from her eyes that she liked the way they filled my arm. As she counted the money, she mumbled, "I don't know why I spoil you so much." The man said, "If you can't be soft with your daughter, who can you be soft with?" Now that we had finished shopping, I was hungry. We stopped at the stall, and Ba asked the cook if he was Brahmin. The cook said yes, pointing to the Janoi sacred thread that he wore over his right shoulder. We bought pop dye, fried crisp wafers made of chickpeas that were served with raw papaya slices and green chilies, sautéed in mustard oil. As the man served us pop dye, he said, "My brother is a jalib, has a jalib stand by the entrance. Make sure to get some." Ba smiled at him and nodded. While eating, we watched a Madari and his pet monkey. The monkey was dark with white marks on his face and a long tail. At his master's command, he did somersaults, danced, and did other tricks. At the end of his performance, he gave a salute like the Indian men gave to the Ingrid bosses, then came around with a cap to collect money.
Ba gave me a coin, and when I dropped it in the monkey's cap, he gave me another salute. By the time the show was over, I had eaten all the green chilies, and the roof of my mouth was on fire. I glanced at the man frying jalebis. If I could just eat one jalebi, my mouth would stop burning, I said to Ba. She smiled as if she approved my reasoning. She handed me a silver ruby. "Go get half a dozen and bring back the change." Ba and I took the jalebis and sat in the temple's courtyard. I had eaten only one when I saw a young boy watching me. His dark and deep-set eyes looked sad, I still had 2 of my jalebis left, so I walked over and offered them to him. He refused at first, but I stood there with my arm outstretched until he took them. He smiled, and I could see he was missing his front 2 teeth. Ba shared jalebis with me. After we finished eating, we went inside the temple. People were coming in for arti, to pray together. The priest lit a brass divi lamp that held 25 flames of light. Then the musician began playing cymbals, drums, and flutes, and people started to sing. The priest moved the divi in an alternating circle and semicircle. All around the temple, the music echoed. The shadows of the golden light danced, and the Sanskrit verses twined.
Once Arti was over, the sun had already set, and the fair had been lit with lanterns. It was time to go home. As Ba and I walked down the temple steps, I saw Fat Soma and his wife Pushpa holding hands. Fat Soma and Ranalal had been best friends in school, and I had known Fatsoma forever because his grandfather and my grandfather were brothers. Despite his name, Fatsoma was not fat, but he had been until he was 7. Everyone except for his grandmother still called him Fatsoma. On the first day of school, when his teacher addressed him as Soma, he politely asked to be called Fatsoma. Fatsoma and Pushpa let go of each other's hands the instant they saw us. When they stopped to talk to us, Ba said, "Fatsoma, I will not tell your parents." Pushpa's cheeks turned red with embarrassment, and she pulled her sari over her forehead out of respect for Ba. Fatsoma glanced at her, then us, and smiled. His crooked tooth poked out a bit. It was getting darker every second, and we didn't see Masi and Haraben. "Let's go to the cart," Ba said. "If they are there, we can take them home." They were waiting by the cart. I showed Masi my bangles.
Masi fingered them. "Pretty. They fill your arms nicely. What else did you get?" "I got something to put in my hair, and we ate jalebis," I said. "Of course you did, Princess Leela. When you go to your in-laws' house, you'll be sorry for all the pampering. So what if I get her a few more things?" Ba said. "Between the 2 brothers, our family has only 1 daughter. That doesn't mean you should throw money on her every whim. Instead of buying all of this useless stuff, you should have saved the money. Last year we bought more gold than you did, and we have more money, we have many more mouths to feed than you. How did we do it? By living frugally and not spending our breakable little trinkets. When you sell gold, you get your money back. When you sell trinkets, you get nothing." I glanced at Ba. She was quiet. I turned to Masi. "You can buy all the gold you want. I'd rather wear these pretty things than gold." Masi stared at me for a second. Then she turned her face away. Ba sighed deeply. I stared out on the darkness. I knew Ba felt sorry that Masi's mother-in-law was so strict and controlling, but it bothered me that Masi scolded Ba every chance she got. It was as if Masi were the older sister.
I wished Ba would tell Masi to keep her wisdom to herself. Laka let us out by the front gate before taking the bullock cart around back. Bapuji and Kaka were sitting with a few other men under the kasuda tree on catless bed frames made of teak wood and laced with sturdy jute strings. Men often gathered in our courtyard in the evening, since it was so large, and right across from Ramji Mandir, the Lord Rama temple. Because of the war, we couldn't use much fuel, so there were only a few lanterns casting a small light on the men's faces, and large shadows all around them. Bapuji looked in our direction, and the light bounced off his wide forehead. Kaka waved his hand at me. I waved back. One of the men said, "I don't understand what Gandhiji can do about our drought problem. He's asking the Sarkar government to let go of our taxes, and we must be grateful to him," Bapuji said. Gandhiji's real name was Mohandas Gandhi, but out of respect, people called him Gandhiji. He had established an ashram, a communal living place, on the bank of the Sabaramati River, near the city of Ahmedabad. I had heard Bapuji, Kaka, and other men mention his name often, because Gandhiji was always fighting for the rights of poor farmers and laborers. The British are as solid as the Himalayas. Why would they listen to a little man like Gandhiji?
I heard someone say as I walked toward the house. "He may be small, but he is fearless. Last year, Gandhiji was in Bihar speaking with farmers. When the Sarkar threatened to arrest him if he didn't return home, saying he was an outsider in Bihar, he replied, 'You have come 5,000 miles away from consider yourself insiders. But I am an outsider because I have come from Gujarat. I will not obey your order.' He And he didn't, Bapuji said. Remember, no one can build an empire by being compassionate. The Sakar will not let a single pie go. The image of Ingrid on the horse came to my mind. He looked so unyielding. Would people like him show mercy and waive the taxes?